What's going on, guys? It's your boy D. Today we're going to be comparing the Miyoo Mini V4 to the TrimUI Beick, and hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions if you're looking at buying just one of these devices. So let's take a look. Alright guys, so today we're taking a look at these two devices, the TrimUI Beick and the Miyoo Mini V4. We're going to be going over just a few things. We're hopefully going to keep this video pretty short and sweet and just answer some questions that you guys might have in comparing these two. Without further ado, we're going to be taking a look at software on these devices. We're going to compare the screens on these devices. We're going to compare the ergonomics on these devices. And we're going to compare overall gameplay and just how does it perform. So those are our four categories. One of these is going to be the winner of each of those four categories. And at the end, hopefully you'll have some better insight as to which one may be a better use of your money and your time. So first off, we'll start with software. So software on these two devices is going to be pretty similar. They're just, they're vertical handhelds that emulate about the same stuff. The Miyoo and the Miyoo Mini and the Miyoo Plus will emulate everything from NES and Atari and Game Boys, all the old stuff that's just obvious, up to and including some DS and PlayStation 1 games on the Miyoo Mini, with not a whole lot of exceptions. For the most part, it handles everything pretty well. With the TrimUI Beick, however, you do have about the same Rolodex of games and consoles that you can play as the Miyoo Mini, with the added bonus of PSP. Now, maybe there is a PSP emulator on the Miyoo that is just as functional or nearly as functional. I just haven't tried it out. So if it's there, don't tear me apart, it's there. But I have been very impressed with the PSP emulation on the TrimUI Beick. That said, as far as like the software and UI goes, on the Beick, I'm running NextUI. On my Miyoo, I'm running Onion OS. Between the two, just overall, the biggest thing for me is that these each are running RetroArch underneath, so that is what is actually emulating the games. I haven't had much issue with like latency when loading games or playing games with either one of these, so that's not a big concern I think you'd have to have for any one of them. But overall, Onion OS on the Miyoo Mini I think is better. Like I said, they're both running RetroArch. However, the Miyoo has a button, or the TrimUI has a button that just opens up your menu, and as you can see, it is a skinned down version of RetroArch. So if we go into our options here, these are all the options that we have. Now you can look through here, just like I have, comb every single one of these. If you're looking for like rewind or some of those like more RetroArch specific settings, they're lacking most of them in the TrimUI Beick. You have fast forward, you have save states, you have shortcuts, a lot of the same stuff. The important things to just play games are here. But on here, you've got full RetroArch. It's not done with a single button press, but instead with a shortcut. Again, this is Onion OS, but this is full RetroArch running here. So we've got rewind, we've got all the little bells and whistles that we've come to know and love from RetroArch. Each of these devices does have a game switcher. So if you press this button right here on the Miyoo, it will open your game switcher. If you press the TrimUI button and the select button at the same time, like that, it will open your game switcher. So you have the option on both of these. Minor gripe, but one thing that I do prefer on the Miyoo over the Beick is that it does have a time counter up at the top here for all of your games. You can cycle through all the games that you've been playing. It has a screenshot. When you click on it, it loads right back to the same spot, and it keeps track of your time. The game switcher on the TrimUI is very similar on the Beick. Still has your screenshots, still has all your games, but what is missing is the game time tracker on the top. So that's just something that I kind of grew used to with the Miyoo and kind of liked. I don't obviously keep track of every game time for every game that I play, but it would just be nice to have it up there. So minor gripe, but that goes to the Miyoo on that one. And then just overall, I think with software, there are still some bugs with the TrimUI Beick. You don't want to power it all the way down. I've had an issue where I powered it all the way down. It was at 80%. The next day I went to pick it up, battery was completely dead and it showed no signs of life. So I had to plug it in, took me a couple chargers, but I finally figured out a charger that would charge this thing up, and I thought it was just toast, but it bounced back. So don't power off the TrimUI Beick. It actually has a really nice deep sleep feature. If you just click the button one time, you can see all the LEDs right here will kind of strobe, and then they'll go off after about 5 seconds. You can change the time, but I think I've got one set to 5 seconds. Now this is, for all intents and purposes, powered off. It's not using a lot of battery. I have noticed it uses just a tiny bit, but it's about like a phone in standby mode. It tends to do pretty good with the battery. And in fact, the community recommends that you do that with NextUI and the TrimUI Beick. Just do deep sleep rather than powering it all the way off, which was weird for me coming from the Miyoo, where it does have a sleep mode where it does put the screen to sleep, but this light constantly stays on. And then after probably about 5 or 10 minutes, the device itself completely powers off. So it doesn't just wake back up. You have to power it back on. That's a little trade-off. But this one doesn't. I've never had an issue with powering it off and powering it back on and having any kind of a bug. So there is that. Now that said, overall they're pretty similar software experiences, but just those few things that I mentioned with the Miyoo and the few bugs that are on the Beick definitely make the software on the Miyoo just more reliable, more polished, and just kind of has more simple to use features in my experience. Now moving on to the screen, on the TrimUI Beick, we have got a 3.2 inch screen, and then on the Miyoo Mini V4, we've got a 2.8 inch screen. So just a difference of a little less than half an inch, which doesn't seem all that significant, but especially when you're coming from the Miyoo Mini specifically, it's such a small device. It really does feel bigger, even though it's only less than half of an inch. It just feels bigger. The other thing with the screen, in my experience with gaming, I just tend to like the crispiness, the clarity, just the colors, everything with the TrimUI Beick. So screen, I'm going to have to give to the Beick. Moving on to ergonomics of these two devices, they're similar designs. They are vertical handhelds with 4 shoulder buttons, all the face buttons, and that's kind of what we've come to expect. This is what a vertical handheld looks like in 2025. So as far as the ergonomics go, based on the size, you can see there, the TrimUI Beick is definitely, goes without question, is more comfortable in the hands for people with bigger hands. The Miyoo Mini, as you can see, I can pretty much fit the whole thing and even touch my fingers on the other side, which is not something you're going to care about most of the time, but what that means in practice is that you do end up getting cramps. You do end up adjusting the device a lot and moving and trying to do different things so that your hands are not uncomfortable, especially if you have bigger hands. Really, and it's not, your hands don't have to be huge either. My hands are not huge, but this is not a comfortable device. So don't let anybody tell you the Miyoo Mini V4 is the most comfortable, most perfect device all around. It's so nice, and I love my Miyoo Mini, but if we're honest, it is not comfortable to use. The TrimUI Beick is very comfortable to use. It's not as comfortable, obviously, as like a bigger handheld. I've got an RG405V here. This one is literally just built for ergonomics. It's so comfortable, but that is absolutely nowhere close to the Beick and the Mini. This, if you're looking for something pocketable, the Beick, I think they have hit it right on the head with ergonomics. They even give you the option, comes with, I think, 2 or 3 sets of different shaped and height shoulder buttons on the back. These are like Lego pieces. They just pop right off of there, and you can swap those out, which I think is pretty cool. Whereas the Miyoo Mini, all of the buttons just kind of blend in. They're all on kind of the same level there. And you tend to get accidental button presses and things, especially because when you're holding it, my fingers literally like overlap in the back. So kind of tough to use the shoulder buttons. They're almost useless in some things, especially if it's something that you like really have to be precise with. It's not going to be a super fun experience. So ergonomics goes to the Beick. Now, finally, the fourth and final thing, we're going to be comparing games and just overall experience with the devices. My experience with the Miyoo Mini has been practically perfect in terms of gameplay and things, with the exception of some Game Boy Advance, and that could be just the core and RetroArch that I'm using, but some of the ROM hacks, you guys know which ones I'm talking about. Some of the ROM hacks on the Miyoo Mini tend to have some slowdown or some crashing or some audio distortion and things, whereas those same ROM hacks on the TrimUI Beick run just fine. Gameplay wise, everything is tailored on the Beick to just be smooth and seamless. I think it's why it's missing some of the retro arch features is because it's just designed to just be something you can pick up and play. There's not a ton of bells and whistles, not a lot of customization with Next UI, that is. So that's an important distinction. The operating system is going to make a difference there on that, but overall, I just have to give the experience for gaming and things to the Brick as well. So in closing, I think that either one of these devices that you go with, I think you're going to be happy with them. If you're looking for something that is just ultra pocketable and still pretty competent and still pretty usable and, you know, does the job, the Miyoo V4 or even the Miyoo Plus would probably be a great option. Onion OS, the custom firmware on this device, I love. If I could take Onion OS and put it on this device, I would do that, and I think we'd have a perfect device. So that's what I've got for you guys. If you guys have either of these devices or you have both of them and you have a different opinion or the same opinion, let's talk about it. Tell me down in the comments below what you guys think. That's what I got for you guys today. Have a good one.